Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right into a massive geopolitical puzzle today, the One China policy. Specifically, we're going to unpack exactly why India's historic diplomatic stance on this super sensitive issue is undergoing a dramatic transformation right now. So if you've been seeing headlines about Taiwan, China, and India, and you're wondering how they all connect, well, you are in the exact right place.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. 1. The One China policy. 2. Why Taiwan matters. 3. India's traditional stance. 4. Growing India-Taiwan ties. And finally, 5. The 2020 turning point.
Section 1. The One China policy. Understanding the baseline.
So what actually is the One China policy? Fundamentally, it's the international recognition, and yes, this includes the US and the larger global community, of China's sovereign claims over Taiwan. Basically, it means acknowledging that there is only one legitimate Chinese government. Now, it's kind of a diplomatic tightrope. While the US backs Taiwan in a whole bunch of ways, officially they subscribe to this policy. And because of this, Taiwan gets largely shut out of international organizations where strict sovereign statehood is a requirement.
To really understand how we ended up on this tightrope, we have to cleanly distinguish the two main players. Over on the mainland, you have the PRC, the People's Republic of China, which has maintained communist control since 1949. But then, on the island, you have the ROC, the Republic of China, which is present-day Taiwan. And here's the thing, the ROC was actually declared way earlier, back in 1911 by Dr. Sun Yat-sen.
Right, so this modern divide was forged through decades of really intense conflict. It started with that 1911 declaration, but eventually a massive civil war broke out. Fast forward to 1949, the communists secure a victory, forcing the ruling party to retreat to Taiwan, while the PRC takes total control of the mainland. Now here's a wild fact. For decades during the Cold War, the government in Taiwan was actually the only China recognized at the UN. But the real game changer hit in 1971, when the UN officially recognized the PRC as the legitimate China, replacing Taiwan entirely.
Moving right along to Section 2. Why Taiwan matters. The global prize. Guys, the sheer scale of Taiwan's strategic importance literally cannot be overstated. Economically, they're the absolute bedrock of the modern electronics industry. We're talking about those tiny silicon chips that run everything, mainly made by companies like TSMC. If Taiwan stops producing, the global tech supply chain basically hits a brick wall. Geographically and militarily, though, controlling Taiwan is seen as a core national interest for China. Doing so would massively expand China's exclusive economic zone for things like fishing and drilling rights, and it would significantly extend the Chinese Navy's reach deep into the Pacific. It is, without a doubt, the ultimate strategic prize in East Asia.
Section 3. India's traditional stance. Decades of diplomacy.
Now, let's bring New Delhi into the picture. Historically, India has actually been pretty accommodating of China's territorial claims. They actively followed the One China policy. I mean, India was one of the very first countries to even recognize communist rule in China. Back in 1954, a trade agreement officially acknowledged Chinese control of Tibet, and things stayed in that sort of diplomatic baseline until 2003, when a joint declaration formally recognized the Tibet Autonomous Region as part of the PRC. So, for decades, India's default setting was diplomatic accommodation.
But as geopolitics shifted, so did priorities. Section 4. Growing India-Taiwan ties. Cultivating new partnerships. Okay, so despite officially recognizing only the PRC, India definitely saw a huge economic opportunity brewing. As part of its Look East foreign policy, India started quietly building ties with Taiwan. In 1995, they set up the India-Taipei Association. This was a brilliant workaround. It acted as a strategic, non-governmental channel to push vital trade, investment, and cultural exchanges, all without formally breaking the One China policy.
And wow, did this strategy pay off. By 2019, bilateral trade between India and Taiwan exploded to a massive $7 billion, and it was growing at a crazy 20% year over year, heavily driven by integrated circuits and machinery. Today, you've got over 80 Taiwanese companies operating in India, and New Delhi is pushing hard to attract even more of that high-tech investment. Which brings us to the tipping point. Section 5, the 2020 turning point, status quo disruption. So, here is the million-dollar question we have to ask ourselves. After literally decades of playing along with the One China policy, why is India suddenly changing course today? What finally broke that decades-long diplomatic habit?
Well, 2020 was the catalyst.
Following the severe turbulence of the Gawan Valley clash, India started sending some very clear warning signals. First off, Indian parliament members virtually attended the swearing-in ceremony of Taiwan's president, openly praising Taiwanese democracy. Then, New Delhi appointed a top career diplomat as its new envoy to Taiwan. But the most telling move, India's Ministry of External Affairs just stopped mentioning the One China policy in its official communiques. When the Chinese embassy even wrote a letter telling Indian media to stick to the policy, the Indian government basically brushed it off, saying the media is free to report what they want. It was a total shift in tone.
From New Delhi's point of view, they're looking at a stark geopolitical imbalance. Think about it. India historically adhered to the One China policy, acknowledging Tibet in '54 and 2003. But China's approach, completely different. Despite India's concessions, China remains adamant on claiming Indian territories in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. They even build roads through disputed Gilgit-Baltistan while totally ignoring India's objections.
The frustration really boils down to this one powerful sentiment. China has never followed the One India policy. That's the crux of it right there. From the Indian perspective, they've made all these long-standing diplomatic concessions regarding Tibet and Taiwan, but they feel like they're getting absolutely zero territorial reciprocity in return.
Which leaves us with this final pressing thought. As Taiwan eyes India's rising status as a counterbalance to the PRC, and as major Taiwanese supply chains actively look to shift to India, the old rules are fading fast. With diplomatic lines hardening across the Indo-Pacific, we really have to wonder, will the traditional One China policy even survive this intense new era of geopolitical friction? It is absolutely the question that's going to define the next decade of global politics. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.